give more returns. Get more security and more interest on your fixed deposits from Sri Lanka's largest finance company, LMDtv Finance.
To curb corruption, one must be courageous to confront and rise up against the corrupt. Sleep well, be guided by ethics and standards for peace of mind. Refresh Sri Lanka for a civic-minded society. LMD, the voice of business.
Hello and welcome to LMDtv. Tonight on the forum, we're going to talk about the recent budget. And with us, we have Mr. Gajendran, who is the founding and senior partner at Gajma & Co., a fellow member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Sri Lanka, and also the chairman of the International Fiscal Association Sri Lankan branch. Mr. Gajendran, it's very nice to have you on the show.
Yes, thank you, Ruwandi. It's good to be talking to you.
To start off our conversation, can I ask you what your key takes are from the recent budget, and of course, what are the implications of those to businesses?
Yeah, the budget has clearly given us a message that the government and the country is going to stay on course with the IMF program, and there is no question of wavering or moving away from the IMF program like in the past. This is particularly visible because in spite of the many requests by many groups of people, particularly individual, to mitigate the effect of income tax, it has not happened. Apart from staying with the IMF program and also making sure there is no relief from income tax point of view, particularly for individual, the government has been smart enough to give some relief to the people by recognizing the importance of land ownership rights, housing ownership rights, share ownership rights. Apparently, when two state banks are privatized, they are going to be giving shares to the employees and public. Their waiver of rent on urban housing, which has gone we have created good impressions on some of the people who are the beneficiaries, and also the cost of living allowance of 10,000 rupees for the public servants, which of course will have an effect on the budget. So these are the key features or key takes on the budget, particularly, and also the question is, with all these key takes, whether we are still living beyond our means is also a question.
And talking about how these, the proposals that you mentioned will impact the business and the corporate world, what are your views on that?
Businesses, that's a very good question. Businesses have been struggling. If you see SMEs, many of the SMEs have been shunned away, and basically they have gone out of business or they are struggling to survive. The larger companies have benefited because of this. Of course, the SMEs are going to get some relief in the form of soft loans, low interest loan from funding from ADB. It will be totaling about 50 billion rupees. Now, because the expenditures are rising and the revenue may not be attained the targets, we have never achieved our revenue targets specified in the budget. It is always revised downwards, and we never achieved that. They have no history of achieving the target. There will be strain on the deficit. Already the budget deficit is around 9%, which can be more than 10% at the end of the year. So this can push interest rates up, particularly because there is no going to be printing of money under the new Central Bank Act. There is independence for the central bank, and there is no question of printing of money at the whims and fancies of the government. So, and also foreign loans will not be forthcoming. So they have to mobilize monies from the public. And in the budget indicates there is no banking borrowings, it's all non-banking borrowing. That means people like you and me. So if you want, when government is short of money and if they're going to borrow, they have to go to the people and issue bills and bonds. And in that case, demand and supply will come into place. The interest rates can go up. And now that we are running large budget deficits and we have a current account deficit in the external front, there is a possibility that exchange rate also can be vulnerable. So these are factors which will affect the businesses. Already the costs of businesses have gone up, particularly the cost of employment has gone up. And the productivity of the staff is also a question. So we are going to have a challenging and turbulent period in 2024, and particularly still the debt restructuring program is not complete. And now there was an announcement, I think, from the finance ministry. It was also in the media that the second tranche of the IMF is expected early December. So this is also getting postponed. So our ratings and credibility standings are getting deferred. The businesses, like the individual, will go through exacting time. Don't forget, we are a bankrupt country, so we are going to have problems and challenges, and there will be suffering.
If I ask you, in your opinion, what is the most promising and the least promising proposal of the budget, what would you say?
Yeah, the most promising is the commitment of the government to stay with the IMF program. Whether we like it or not, we have the country as a whole has misbehaved, and we have lived beyond our means, and now we are under the dictates of the people who are lending us. So we are on course, and there is no indication whatsoever of moving away from the IMF. So that is a promising note. The other promising matter for me is on the budget speech. The last paragraph of the budget speech, when the president, as a finance minister, read that paragraph, it has been emphasized they are going to maintain fiscal and macroeconomic discipline. That means the fiscal management and monetary management is going to be on a principle. It will be disciplined. We'll have to wait and see whether that's going to happen. What is more important is there is an urge and recognition to eliminate governance weaknesses and corruption vulnerabilities. These are definitely, if it is implemented, will be the most promising and will be a game changer for Sri Lanka, particularly corruption vulnerabilities. Of course, when you said the least promising matter is that we are going to still live beyond our means, because we don't see much of the accountability being brought into the budget, because our expenditure is going to rise, and particularly the expenditure to GDP is going to go up about 3.5%, which is a clear indication this is not a promising situation. And the budget deficit is already, with the bank capitalization, is about 9 to 10% as it is. So these are not at all good signs for the country as a whole. Also, I think the purpose of the budget is being lost now. It's not particularly this budget. I think if you see in the past, most of the fiscal proposals, most of the unpleasant things have been done before the budget. And we hear also in the grapevine, things are going to happen after the budget. They are talking of the VAT, increasing the VAT rate to 18% was not announced in the budget. It was before the budget. And also there is a talk that the tax-free threshold for VAT will be brought down from 80 million to 60 million. This is not confirmed, but this is so things are going to happen before and after a budget. So in the past, many years ago, we had in the budget was a document or the event for hope, enthusiasm, and also apprehension. Now we don't have any of those things now, and we have got used to, which is a bad habit, of managing taxes especially import taxes, by the issue of gazette notification, which is again clouded, heavily being argued and debated as being clouded with malpractice. So the things of these things has to be corrected sooner or later if we are going to come out of the woods.
Definitely, Mr. Gajendran. If I ask you, when we are on the path to come out of the woods, what would you say are the most pressing responsibilities of the government and those in policy making at this time? And were these
exactly. Of course, on the policy making, there is one thing is being spoken about the inconsistency of the policies and the ad hoc policies. These policies are not based on research and sort of empirical evidence, and not scientifically analyzed the information and data, and it is done on the run and ad hoc. You can see that from the numbers that are being thrown out, budgetary estimates. Government has clearly recognized that the debt to GDP ratio has to be brought down to 95% to by 2032. Don't forget, Ruwandi, that before the crisis, before the COVID in 2019, our debt to GDP was about 85%. Now it shot up to 128%, 138%. Now see, we are going to wait till 2032, almost 10 years, to bring down to 95%. The government has recognized that, and they say they are going to go towards that goal. The gross financing needs, that is basically the total amount of borrowing required to meet total expenditure and impairment after setting off revenue, which is going to be is targeted at 13% from 2027 to 2032. And also foreign debt ratio, servicing ratio, also they are trying to target it at less than 4.5% of the GDP from 2027 to 2032. The much spoke about the primary account deficit, that is the income minus the expenditure other than interest expenditure, to be positive this year, that is 2024.8%, and next year onwards to be 2.3%. And we are proudly acclaiming that we will be achieving a primary account deficit in 2023 also. But all these surpluses and primary account are coming not because of revenue expenditure management or revenue management, purely because of the scaling down of the capital expenditure. If the capital expenditure is scaled down, you are compromising the future for growth, prosperity, and stability, and the prospects, the future of posterity for short-term gains. That's not the way forward to achieve primary surplus. But these are targets that the government is determined to achieve.
And let's hope they achieve them. In terms of achieving targets,
the indication also are not good, particularly the expenditure. If you see the total expenditure to GDP, 23 is about 18.7%. And in the 24, the total expenditure to GDP is 22.2%. It's almost 3.5% growth in expenditure. When you are bankrupt and we are in need, we are still wanting to spend. True, this bulk of the expenditure is going on to interest. It's about 500 billion. Then even salaries are going out by about 200 billion. But you can't go on spending. What happens if you're unable to raise the monies from the public? If the public is not willing to give and you are not prepared to increase the interest rates, what happens? But if you increase the interest rates, then what happens to businesses? So it's a Hobson choice. So we have to be determined to work within our means. Otherwise, we are asking for trouble. And we have now that defaulted once. I don't know. We should never again go into that position, and we should work towards that. It's everyone's responsibility in that scope.
It's time to take a short break, but we'll soon be back to talk more about the budget.
Display your brand message on digital screens at prime locations. The largest digital advertising network in Sri Lanka. Emerging media.
You're mobile, and so are we.
Gets me going.
Grab the Lite 87 app at the Apple App Store or Google Play now.
87.8 and 87.6 island-wide. Lite 87.
Welcome back to the show. Let's resume our conversation around the budget. And Mr. Gajendran, talking about getting revenue from the public, the budget has projected a 4.1 trillion tax revenue for next year, mainly coming from goods and services taxes. How will this impact ground level economic dynamics of people?
Yeah, it's going to impact the people at large, the multitude in a big way. If you see the numbers and if you give credibility of the numbers, the tax on goods and services, as you said, it's going up by 860 billion rupees, goods and services. These are on consumption taxes. Consumption taxes are regressive in nature, and this impairs the purchasing power of the people. And these taxes are also being imposed. Now, if you see VAT is going to be 18%, social security levy is 2.5%. That when you add numerically, it becomes 20.5%. But social security levy, don't forget, is a cascading tax. There is no input credit mechanism for it. And it can, so the effective rate of consumption tax can be 22% in most of the products, in the case of products, and also in the case of services. In addition, how are we going to meet all this? Our value, if you see you have indirect tax and you have direct tax. Anyone earning more than 300,000 rupees a month will end up paying at 36%. So when you just add up these two numbers, it is almost 56%, and about 40-45% is left. And there again, the money has dropped value by 70-80% over the period of last 2 years. The person who had 100,000 rupees, and if he was paying all these taxes, he would have paid 8% and 24%, 32%, before the COVID. Now they are going to get, they will have about 45 rupees out of 100. And where is that going to end up? Your purchasing power has dropped up. So what you had 100 is not going to be worth, it will be worth few rupees if you have 100. So this is going to be a problem, and that's the reason people have, many international institutions also recognize that our people, about 5.7 million people are poor, and our poverty levels have gone up to about 25-30% of the population. So it's going to be a telling effect on the people.
Speaking of the more optimistic proposals in the budget, the president spoke of establishing new investment zones in Jaffna, Hambantota, Kandy, Trincomalee. How do you think these developments will roll out, number one, and how it will impact the business arena right now?
Yeah, investment is the way forward. There is no question about it, because if you see the composition of the GDP, the gross domestic product, one of the key important factors is the investment, apart from exports over imports, and you have public expenditure and public demand. Investment is a key component, and this investment has to come within the country and from outside the country. But what is that Sri Lanka can offer in the case of an investment for the investors locally and foreign investors? We have Sri Lanka has been recognized as having structural, institutional, legal deficiencies which has to be corrected. One of the reasons of investors, particularly foreign investors, may be skeptical is, apart from other things, one is the high rates of taxes which is prevailing now. So you have to give some fiscal incentives which have not been done. Maybe the government is not able to do it at this point of time, because you are in the midst of an IMF program and debt restructuring. So you cannot give any incentive. I'm not talking of tax holidays, but naturally countries, our neighboring countries, tax competition is not a good word, they are offering different incentives. Even larger countries, developed countries are offering different types of incentive. So we shouldn't give tax holidays. That's we can accept that, but you have to recognize businesses if they are going to train people, retrain people, learning, unlearning, and relearning. You have to do this to keep people with you. Most of the time, the people who are competent, skilled people are leaving the country or moving jobs. So there has to be recognition for these expenditure from a fiscal point of view, where the fiscal expenditure is more than the actual legal expenditure. There again, if you want to be a competitive nation, we have to see how we can develop our products. How can we enhance our products? How can we develop our businesses? How can we improve our businesses and processes? So these are expenditures you will incur in the form of research and development and other expenditure. These also has to be recognized from fiscal point of view, and you have to give relief. Similarly, expenditure on green economy, expenditure on making agriculture products competitive, agricultural processing has to be recognized. Branding is something that we have to look. So there are certain expenditures that we have to learn to give more for the fiscal expenditure for that is the expenditure for tax purposes should be more than the actual legal expenditure. So you can designate investment zone, but you have to tell why Sri Lanka should be the darling for the investors, particularly the foreign investors. And we could have done that very well after the conflict ended, but we have definitely gone on a different direction altogether. If you see our foreign FDIs are drying up, and even it can be less than even another country, some other countries in our region, most of the countries in our region, we will be ranked very low when it comes to foreign direct investments. So we can designate zone, but we have to work towards that to entice investments into those zones. And don't forget about in the early 90s, we recognized Sri Lanka as the entire investment zone. So there must be some plans for recognizing these zones. We will have to wait and see. But you have to inform the investors, particularly the foreign investors and also the local investors, why you should be making investment. And also in this budget, there is no incentive or recognition for saving and investment. You know, when someone makes some money, my father used to tell when we were young, when you earn, first you must save, then you must invest, or at least first you must invest, then you must save. And if there is anything balance, you spend. Sri Lanka, we are spending most of our expenditure is on recurrent expenditure. That means on consumption. There is nothing for saving or investment. I think there must be fiscal legislation brought in even in the future to recognize and give incentive people who save and people who invest. If you invest, it is going to boost the GDP. It's a component of GDP. Then if the GDP growth, there will be income growth, there will be employment growth, and there will be more income in the hands of the people.
Another interesting proposals rather that we saw was that there is a lot of importance and priority given to creating a green economy, like you said, and also investing more in terms of technology, AI, and digital technological advancements. What are your views on this? Because they are very important, that's undisputed. But of course, we are juggling a very difficult set of balls here. And how do you think Sri Lanka should go about this?
Green economy is the way forward. There is no question about it. When you say green economy, it's the harmonious relationship between humanity and nature. Don't forget that nature doesn't need us, but we need the nature. Nature can survive without us, but we can't survive without nature. So we have basically abused nature. You can see what's happening even in Sri Lanka. There are flash floods, there are earth slips, and there is continuous rain for last so many weeks in Sri Lanka. and there are trees falling. Even in place like Dubai, it was underwater. So there is no question that we have to embrace green economy and going green. When you go green means it is brings about equity and prosperity for all. Green economy brings about a win-win solution. When industrialization, uh, countries benefited through industrialization because they went through the large scale of industrialization. But countries like us, we don't have industrial products. We were not contributed to carbon dioxide, but other countries contributed. But when that happened, not only them, all are getting affected. But if you go green, it'll be just and fair for all, and it'll be prosperity for all. It's a win-win solution. So I think the president is hell bent on this technology, green economy, and also renewable energy, where we will be able to export energy from Sri Lanka, and that's another way of attracting foreign direct investment. On the question of technology and artificial intelligence, just gender technology has come to stay. Uh, Technology, the digitalization brings about scale and speed and accuracy. And if you have Ruwandi and you can have Ruwandi AI, the AI will do all what Ruwandi can do at much faster pace and scale and with accuracy. So Ruwandi can get redundant because of Ruwandi AI. But the difference is Ruwandi can step up further. You can innovate, you can be creative, but the AI will be only up to a point. And in this process, there can be challenges for Sri Lanka, because if you are going for technology, you need money, you have to invest. So that is going to be a challenging factor. But then you can be also, you have to recognize, we have to balance this, because when dynamite was invented by Alfred Nobel, you can remember there was an obituary. There was an obituary by mistake that Alfred Nobel has died, and that the wrong obituary brought about celebration in the people, because dynamite was viewed as destruction. So dynamite can be for destruction and it can be for construction, and that's the reason he went on to establish the Nobel Prizes, I believe. So the AI and technology, digitization can be productive, improve wealth, and it can be destructive. People are willing to adapt and they are going to upskill themselves. AI, the technology can overrun. Now there will be no taxable individuals or companies. It has to be taxable AIs. So it's going to be a challenge on managing the technology to be a beneficiary and not being affected or destroyed by it.
Thank you, Mr. Gajendran. My last question to you is regarding, well, it's revolved around LMD's own campaign, Refresh Sri Lanka. I'm sure you would have seen it. We launched it last year to encourage a mindset change in society and create a more civic-minded nation, looking at the long and arduous journey that we have, that Sri Lanka has next year. How would you say that policymakers should prioritize things like stopping corruption and also prioritize instilling more civic-mindedness into running Sri Lanka?
Corruption is the word, it's the bane of Sri Lanka. If Sri Lanka wants to do one thing to come out of this mess, all other things are not necessary. It is deal with corruption. I think I must congratulate your institution to taking a lead on this. Corruption, the fish stings from the head. Now you are trying to put the Department of Inland Revenue into order, the customs into order, excise department into order. You are trying to get the government servants to work. It's not going to work. You have to stop malfeasance, misfeasance, nonfeasance, and palm greasing right at the top. One good thing is that our President in his budget speech has recognized that we have to eliminate governance weaknesses and we have to eliminate corruption vulnerabilities. If we don't do this, we can try to do everything else, but nothing will happen because unfortunately, it's a sad state in Sri Lanka. The decision makers, including the policy makers, whether decisions are made for the benefit of the multitude, for the people at large, or for the country is questionable. First, it has to be self-serving and self-enhancing, and then only other things. So this mentality has to change. It has to be eliminated altogether. If not, we are not going to move. We'll go from nowhere to nothing.
Definitely.
Immunity and impunity on this matter, because in this country, if you do some grievous mistake, the probability of you getting caught is very low because you are on the right side of the coin, there is immunity given for you. And even if you get caught, the probability of you getting punished is also very low. So with immunity and impunity, the culture of impunity has to be taken away in this country. This is something that has to be done. I don't know, any government that is going to come in has to do this. Otherwise, we will not have answers. Because if you are, no decision is by and large made to the benefit of the public. So it's one thing that if you want to do, don't do anything else. Stop this. Sri Lanka will be back in its place.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gajendran, for a delightful and interesting conversation. We've been speaking with the founding and senior partner at Gajma & Co., fellow member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Sri Lanka, and the chairman of the International Fiscal Association Sri Lankan branch, Mr. N.R. Gajendran. It was very nice having you on the show, sir.
Thank you, Ruwandi. Thank you. Nice talking to you.
And to all our viewers, thank you so much for joining us. Until next time, take care.
Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Thank you for watching and stay safe.